order the meeting of the Transportation Committee 12/15/2021. So thank you all for being here. I think virtually is going to be easier moving forward by and large, especially as meeting space gets tighter. So as long as folks don't have an issue with that, hopefully we can keep these in a remote fashion. So per the agenda, I did confirm with Amy that you all did in fact dupe me into being chair. It cannot stand as the liaison to this committee. I am not allowed to hold any of these positions. So amongst you all, you must now find a new chair and a new recording clerk. And so I mean, I'm happy to run this meeting until we get the chairs. So amongst you, those who wish to either nominate or nominate themselves to be chair, please go ahead and do so. Don't all do so at once, though. Let's just do this in an orderly fashion, folks. Everyone calm down, please.
I'm happy to be recording clerk. I am not going to go all the way to chair.
Okay, so we'll take recording clerk because of Melissa's interest. We will take item 2 out of order. And with her nominating herself, do we have a second for that nomination? All right, I see a couple of hands going up. All right, excellent. So with a motion and a second, all those in favor of Melissa Interest becoming the recording clerk for the Transportation Committee. Technically, we're supposed to do a roll call as remote. So I'm just going to kind of go in order of how people are on my screen. Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Ms. Interest.
Yes.
Mr. Harrington.
Yes.
Mr. Covino.
Yes.
Mrs. Bond.
Yep. Yes.
Mrs. McDonald. Well, actually, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. It is not Ms. McDonald anymore. It is now. I'm sorry. So I say it correctly. Is it hyphen McDonald Yetman or is it just Yetman? You're on mute, but I heard you say Yetman. Well, then, Mrs. Yetman, how do you vote? Oh, yes. She's still on mute, but I can see her mouth moving. And is it all 7 of you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Who am I missing? Oh, Melissa Mazzato is not here with us this evening. All right, I'm just gonna make note of that. So with a vote of 6 in favor, no opposition or abstention, congratulations, Melissa. You are now the recording secretary. And I can send you along the information from the clerk's office in terms of all that fun jazz. And my pen
Yeah,
just
I'm working off of your template that you sent for the last minute, so that's easy enough.
okay, perfect. I mean, you may already know, but there are some like general rules of like within 30 days or 2 meetings, that kind of stuff. Great. Okay, so let's circle back to item 1 for chair. I know everyone's chomping at the bit to hold this position.
Okay, I'll take a bite. I'd like to nominate Rick Parker.
Rick, see, you stay quiet too long. This is what happens. All right, we have a nomination on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, with a nomination.
Sorry, Rick. You're gonna get me for that later.
With a nomination and a second, we'll put it to a vote. Mr. Parker, how do you vote?
I abstain.
Mrs. Interest?
I vote yes.
Okay. Mr. Harrington?
I vote yes.
Ernie?
I vote yes also.
Catherine?
Yes.
Marge?
Yes.
All right. With a 5-1-0 vote, Mr. Parker is now the chair of the Transportation Committee. And with that, I will happily turn the meeting over to you, sir.
Well, that was unexpected. Okay, well, I hope that I can lead this meeting and give it the importance that it certainly needs. I guess I'll start off by saying that from the last meeting, we're given the assignment, Marge and I, to look at assets that could potentially be used for transportation. That's a very short list. And, you know, I don't want to spend a lot of time going over that, but let's just deal with that first. We have two vehicles that are under the Council on Aging's purview. One is a minivan and one is a minibus. And the other vehicle we have is a 16-passenger van used by the rec department to bring their staff to and from fields. It's not a great surprise that it's a very small inventory because we don't utilize town's assets for these types of services. And when we use the Beeline, we contracted it out. We can certainly discuss further if we think we're going to be able to utilize those, but I'd really like to move on to discussing the assets that currently exist for public transportation in the town, just so this committee will understand what's being done outside of the town's control, but that are flowing through Burlington, so we can all get an idea of what's out there. Now, excuse me, Mr. Priest, can't call you Chairperson Priest any longer. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
You should be able to.
Okay,
I'm going to make you the presenter and see if that.
You should have a link at the bottom of the WebEx
Yep.
screen that says share, and anybody can just jump in.
okay. Is everyone able to see my screen here?
Yep, got the map of town.
Okay, so using Google Maps, I was able to work on the public transportation that's here, and these are start off with the MBTA's line 350. This line goes from Alewife, Cambridge to Chestnut Street. For those who don't know Chestnut Street, it's the street right behind Lakash's and the Whole Bunch Flower Market. That ends up being a point which terminates a lot of these routes that we'll talk about. But I just want to give you an idea of what that looks like within Burlington. Pay no attention to these letters that are here. I had to force this to take turns that it normally wouldn't have taken when trying to do a route. But as you see, it comes in from Alewife, primarily down Mass Ave and Cambridge Street. But when it comes into Burlington, let's look at this a little more in detail. Comes into Burlington, goes up past Wayside, South Bedford Street, down the Mall Road, over to Middlesex Turnpike, down 4th Ave, over to 3rd Ave, then back up the Mall Road all the way to Cambridge Street, and it terminates at Chestnut, which is again behind Lakash's. So that's the 350. That is a route that makes many stops within Burlington, but the key ones that it's hitting while it's in Burlington are Wayside, Leahy, the Mall, and 3rd Ave. Let's go to the next route, which is the MBTA 351. This is really just a feeder. This comes from Bedford Woods. It runs to 3rd Ave and it stops at EMD Serrano in Billerica. This allows 3rd Ave to pick up with the 350 and the 354 that will go to other areas. And I just want to show this is just another feeder into the town. Let's get rid of the 351. Let's go to the 354. The 354 originates at State Street, Boston, ends again at Chestnut Street behind Lakash's, and in Burlington runs the whole length of Cambridge Street. The next one we have is the LRTA 13.
Rick, question,
Sure.
the 354, is that operating express right now, or is that whatever the opposite of express is?
354, that's a great question. It's an express.
I didn't know if I know with COVID they took away express, so I didn't know if they brought it back.
Yeah, this is saying currently, these are current schedules that are up, the ones that I'm talking about. upcoming route. It's effective December 19th, will be the changes, but this is what we have right now. Let me just get back to where I was here for a second. So the LRTA 13, that's really just feeding in from Kennedy Center in Lowell. It ends up at Chestnut Street and it goes through Bill Rickus Center. So this is again another feeder into Burlington. And then we have LRTA 14, which starts at the Kennedy Center in Lowell, comes through Bill Ricka and ends up down at Leahy. So when this one's in town, this comes down Middlesex Turnpike, goes over to the mall over at Macy's, does a loop at Leahy, and then heads back. So while it's in Burlington, this is really just coming down to the mall and Leahy. So the other one that we have coming in is the Lex Express, which starts at Lexington Depot. It terminates at Leahy and it stops at Market Basket down at Middlesex Crossing, and also stops at the mall. So if we look at most of the activity that's happening in the town, it's no surprise. If we look at the ones that are here doing some efforts in Burlington and not just feeding in. The activities along Cambridge Street, the Mall Road, and Middlesex Turnpike with a focus on the mall and Leahy, which is really no surprise that these are the main points in Burlington that people outside of Burlington are going to. But it also affords people in Burlington the ability to jump on these lines and maybe move around Burlington, whether or not that's economically feasible for them. That's another story. But I think if you look at other transportation that's been set up, and the nature of transportation is to share routes with people who are going the same place, coming from the same place. And when we talk about Burlington being a vehicle-driven community, that's because people might want to go to the same place, but they're not coming from the same place. So if I get rid of these routes here for a minute, as you can see, I spent a little bit of time trying to put this together. The next thing we look at in Burlington are where are people coming from the same spot. So if we look at where the multifamily locations are in Burlington, they don't tend to be necessarily in those same areas. We certainly have some things down at, the Tremont and the Huntington down in that area. We've got Seven Springs, and Lord Barrett is at the tip of Middlesex Turnpike. But most of the other multifamily tend to be on the other side of town, along the center of town, or even some of the outliers. What have we got here? We've got Arborwood and Kimball Towers are on the opposite side of town, where there's really no access to public transportation there. One of the other things to take into consideration as we talked about these things is schools, and there's really no opportunity for people, for kids, for after-school programs, and this is where they'll be, coming from. And again, you can see this tends to be away from those areas that we talked about, the mall and Leahy, where the students are. And in many cases, they might be going to recreation. And these are the parks outlined throughout the town. And again, those don't fall on the lines of where that public transportation is. So I've just got there are a couple of things for us to be thinking about as we move forward is, where are these people? Where do they want to go? And Marge and I also talked a little bit about, and I think we'll talk about this in this committee. What do the seniors need transportation for? And the seniors' needs are really much more diverse, with pickup spots being totally different than each other. And they're going primarily to medical appointments, shopping, and things around town. The workers who may take public transportation to get here, their real need is during the lunchtime. You know, getting out to do an errand, maybe even, you know, maybe go to a medical appointment or to grab lunch. But without a car, if they take public transportation in those hours, you know, between 11 and say 3 is when they'll be primarily needing transportation. And then you've got the after-school activities that roughly, you know, run from 2 to 6. So these are the things that we ended up talking about because we looked at, you know, the inventory of vehicles really wasn't what one might think from an outsider's perspective. Let me see if I can stop sharing here.
So Rick, while you're doing that, you know, it seems like there are several pitfalls with the current, you know, setup for public transportation, right? There's the lack of an ability of, or the lack of convenience, we'll say, right? I think that, you know, if we're talking about taking a car-based community and trying to make it less car-based, you know, you're not going to see residents, you know, hopping on the LRTA or, you know, the Mbta waiting for, you know, these things when they just need to go 2 miles down the road, 3 miles down the road. You know, and then again, for seniors who might need more immediate access or, you know, even from a regional perspective of folks trying to get from, you know, Bedford, Lexington, Wilmington, Woburn to Burlington or vice versa, there are basically no options that allow them ease of convenience to do so. And so
That's correct.
a big question for this committee is, you know, what kind of undertaking would it take to provide something like that, and is it worth providing? And I don't think I've sent it out yet, but I did finally get my hands on and I know, you know, Marge, you're familiar with this, and other folks are probably familiar with this as well, but the tri-town study that was done between us, Bedford, and Lexington. It's a massive presentation. And the biggest problem with it is cost. But I feel like, you know, if we relook at that solution from a regional perspective, maybe there are some things in there that we can tweak, conform, we might get some ideas from it. You know, because I mean, I don't know, the notion of like if there was an easier way for me to like walk down to, you know, 62, you know, a 3-minute walk from where I live and pick up a line that's going to get me to someplace in town that I need to be, you know, I wouldn't mind doing that in lieu of taking my car. You know, I know that there are a lot of families and residents in town who also wouldn't mind doing that. But the convenience factor is I think the biggest hangup that we're going to be fighting against. It's the tide that we're working against.
That's true, Nick. And also, these are not inexpensive solutions. I do have some experience when we were looking at running a shuttle for late night service for restaurant and hospitality workers. These are not cheap solutions, you know, to have a fully insured, you know, vehicle that will transport with backup should the vehicle, you know, become disabled, becomes very expensive, and to have an alternate route in emergencies. So part of the discussion here should be, and I know that you and I talked a little bit about this leading in, what is the commitment on the town to fund anything that comes out of this? Because there is going to be a financial component no matter what gets decided here. And if it's one of those things we're trying to get cars off the road, this is not a unique challenge. You know, Burlington's not alone. This is suburbia, and suburbia does not generally have these shuttles and things that run around town because they don't have ways to pick up people at their location. You can look at being able to do it for some of the you know, multifamily or places where people can get to for that initial stop, but that has to be determined, you know, what's the need and what are the alternatives. But I did want to ask Marge to talk a little bit about, because the seniors are a challenge where they're all coming from different places, they're all going to different places. But there is something in place right now with the Lyft program that the Council on Aging has going. So I just wanted Marge to be able to give an opportunity to talk a little bit about that so we all know the full inventory of what's happening.
Thanks, Rick. So, it's actually two components to the program. There's Lyft and then there's GoGo Technologies, or GoGo Grandparents, as Melissa and I know them. The Lyft is just off the app on your phone, and GoGo Technologies is a concierge service for originally for seniors. So they are unfortunately also 28 cents a minute more than using regular Lyft. Beyond that, they basically work the same. The GoGo Technologies, you make the phone call to GoGo and you say I need a ride, and they have your address and they pick you up, and they track the ride to make sure you get there okay, which is not something Lyft does, obviously. And then when you're ready to go home, you call them and they know where you are and they get the ride for you. What's nice about GoGo is that they also have notes so that they know if somebody's not good and patient with seniors and people who are disabled. Lyft is just your basic, Lyft, Uber. The program is for folks who are over 60, disabled, or income of less than 300% of the federal poverty level. I'd say mostly seniors. I have some disabled, and I have folks that are disabled that are using it along with the ride. So I have some folks that are literally they have the ride. It's cheaper for them to use us, number one, but also they only have so many rides with the ride. So once they use those up, then they come over to use the town. And a couple of those are actually visually impaired and they're going to work every day. So it's very helpful for them. We are spending about somewhere between $500 and $5,500 a month on the program. 50 to 60 rides generally. So it seems to increase a little bit every month. There is some problems with the surge pricing, and I think John Strauss can talk a little bit about that. I know that it's gotten better, but I don't think it's gotten better enough. And you go on those really crazy commuting times, and it can be pretty bad. Majority of seniors, of course, are not going during the commuting hours, so it works well for them. But folks who are working, it doesn't. I think they have a little bit more trouble with it. We did reach out to Lyft on that and didn't get a lot of answers, but I think that's pretty much it. It is working fairly well considering, and I think it would be hard to take it out from under some of the seniors that have seemed to have found some freedom, that it helped to get some people off the road, shall we say, during the last year.
Now, Marge, if I can ask, how is that funded? Is that through a grant?
That is, no, it was originally a grant, the first year, and it's now, they're using the old MBTA money from the Beeline that was left over. So that's being utilized for that now.
Okay. And I'm not familiar with the process for that being funded. Is that year to year, or is that? Is there an agreement?
I don't think we're getting more, but there's a good amount in there. And I don't know what the plan is for funding going forward. I've kind of left that in Paul and John's lap. We have another couple of years, I think, before we run out of money.
Yeah, one of the issues here is, certainly during COVID and with a lot of people that are normally in the office, they're not here. But most of the solutions for any of this is not, one person, one car. So I think this is certainly going to get us through the pandemic with this solution, but we need a solution that's going to be, more environmentally friendly and can help more people than just getting that one person, one car, and to have to deal with surge pricing. Because that's just the way the industry works.
Yeah.
I don't know who's crazy enough to make me chair, so we gotta see where we're going next.
Rick, while you're pulling up the agenda, I to your question earlier, or to your point earlier about, kind of the cost associated with stuff as we, put together recommendations. Um, you know, and everyone feel free to chime in on this, because this is my own personal opinion. Is that no matter what we advise back to the select board as a committee, recommendations of, different programs, or, strategies, or whatever it is that we come back with, it's going to cost money. And I don't think that we should kill good ideas based on cost. I think that what we should do is try to make it as cost effective and as friendly to the residents as humanly possible. But that, we have to view public transportation as a cost center. um, the town is not really going to make money off of whatever we are going to provide, and it's probably going to be a myriad of solutions to fit the needs of different people, right? The demographics of town are ever changing, and just on, age demographics alone, you're going to have people who want to commute in different ways. um, but we should look at it first through solving the problem, and, then look at it through a cost is a problem, or, how prohibitive that might be. Because if we can find cheaper solutions, great. But we shouldn't kill ideas because we think it's going to, like, that needs to be a decision the select board and then town meeting makes. To then, decide what we're going to do as a town.
Okay, so to,
I agree. I think we have to build a menu and present them with a menu.
so to that point, we talked about, putting together some strategic efforts. I just did a back of the napkin in the sectors of different demographics and who needs, what the needs are. And there's always needs and wants, and needs are making sure that people can get to their doctor's appointments. I want to make sure, Marge, that with the vehicles that you have, do we have people still in need to get to and from doctor's appointments that aren't being met by the COA van or bus?
Yes, absolutely. Off hours, especially, we'll have folks that have a late afternoon appointment or a really very early morning appointment for when we're not there.
Okay,
That's the
can you
biggest.
define exactly what those off hours are?
It could be somebody who needs an 8 a.m. appointment, has an 8 o'clock appointment, can't get there, or someone has a 3 o'clock appointment in the afternoon, and they're going to be, we only go till 3:30. So
Okay, and you start when?
we start at 9 and we finish at 3:30 on a Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday.
Okay, so that's a need for people that have earlier or later appointments. Now that's Monday through Thursday, no Friday?
Friday, we are basically 9 to 12. And sometimes we'll have too many appointments at once that we can't do everybody at the same time.
Okay,
Is that just speaking about your vehicles, or is that also including the Lyft program?
That's just our vehicles.
Okay.
We have people that will do both, they know that they're going to be late, and then they'll use Lyft coming home.
okay, but beyond Lyft and the COA vehicles, there are still people who aren't being able to get to their appointments.
Correct.
Okay. So that certainly falls under the need category rather than, a want or a nicety. Are there any other things that the seniors beyond that?
I'd say grocery shopping is a biggie, and just the basics, going to the bank, going to get your prescriptions. We've opened it up for them now, to go anytime that we can. And they haven't really, I don't know if they're not ready to come out yet, but we're not getting a lot of bites.
Okay.
I think they're not ready. I think they're, still sending their kids to the store.
Now I can speak to the daytime population and employees. And again, the first shot was that if we want to activate, our businesses, we do have to have some ability to get those people around. And again, you don't want it to be only, Uber and Lyft that they're utilizing for that. certainly if there was more bikes around during the good weather, but unfortunately, that's not predictable, and we've got a heck of a winter coming up for us. That certainly isn't a need. People aren't going to not make a doctor's appointment if they can't go out to lunch. They might have to brown bag it, but it certainly will help to activate some of the businesses that we have here that are, a little bit under normal operation and revenue streams due to COVID. But I also think it's one of those things that our daytime population is very important to the economy, and their ability to be out there spending and maybe utilizing the corporate card is really important to us to capture that money. So that's really the major need for the daytime population that may be coming in on public transportation, or even to keep them, keep their cars parked on site and not have them, driving around during the day if in fact there was another option. That's a secondary thing. I want to be able to talk about the schools a little bit. And Catherine, maybe you're the best person to give us an idea there where we're missing the need to be able to move kids around to free up parents from having to, juggle 10 different things and drive kids from here to there. Other than sports things, are there places that are going amongst the town, or just speak to what the needs of the
Right,
students are?
so we had, the student representative, make a presentation last year and just discuss what the, mostly the high school students, but I'm sure we could assist with, middle school, now elementary. It's not only sports, but it's being able to get home after other after-school activities. They might want to participate in a club, and they have no way, like they can stay, because usually it takes place like right after school, but they have no way to get home. There's no ride. So they tend to just not attend a club they would love to be a part of, and, would look good on their college resume to be a part of, because they can't get a ride. And so I think, if there's opportunity, that's where we can help those students. And I was talking to Marge and Ernie after the last meeting on the coffee talk or the bubbler talk after the meeting. And, the kids, like, I don't think they realize how expensive buses are. They're like, well, just get another bus. And it's like, yeah, do you realize the expense of a bus, right? So it's just trying to find a way, and again, it may not be us supplying a vehicle, but supplying a way for parents to network for those parents who are able to help. I was saying that, having coached, Pop Warner cheer for many years, person I was, you would try to help people out. There were parents who had kids at the high school who were participating in sports, and kids over at the middle school on another field, and they had another child they're dragging along to all the other stuff, and they just had no way to be in two places at one time. So I would give a ride to one of their kids over to the other field on my way home. So just trying to find a way to maybe there's a way we can create a better network than people just knowing somebody from the classroom, because we have so many, I feel like there's so many new people coming to town who don't have family. I mean, when I moved here with my husband, we didn't know anybody. Neither one of us are from Massachusetts. We moved here from other places, and the only way we started getting connected with the community was when our child started school. I mean, we did a little bit before that, but it's really when your kids get involved with school that you start to meet other parents, and you might be able to network. But if you're really new to town, or you're kind of shy, I don't know, it's hard to ask. So if there was some way to come up with some sort of a website that could be shared on the town site, so people could connect, kind of like a ride board or something, I don't know. And again, that may not cost us much. I think we talked about liability, though, if there was any kind of concern with, if we do something like that, how do we cover ourselves as far as liability, or Corey checks or whatever, if we're offering something like that. So that was kind of the brainstorming that went out a lot out in the parking lot after the last meeting.
Okay, so it's the after school, refresh my memory, is there a late bus at all anymore?
Yeah, there are some buses that do help with rides. It's just, it's not convenient for everybody and
Right.
doesn't cover all the times that need to be covered. So yes, there are after-school buses.
Yeah, this is the problem with suburbia that, you know, you've got 10 kids and each are going to a different part of the town. I used to coach Little League and basketball, and I know that I'd always have 2 or 3 that I was taking. You don't know how long it takes to get around town until you've been driving Little Leaguers and they're in the back seat sweating and fogging the windows. All right.
You know, and again, it's high school students who don't have access to a car, right? You
Right.
know, my child was lucky enough to have a car, but there are a lot of them that don't, and their parents are working full time, so they can't leave work at, 4 o'clock. I mean, I know with more people having the flexibility and working from home, it's helped a little bit, but there's still those kids who just cannot get a ride with anyone, and it's frustrating.
I
Okay.
have an odd thought, if I may. High school students still need to do community service, right? For their transfer for college applications and all that fun stuff, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly not a mandatory thing, but if you want to go anywhere, you better be involved in the community.
Yeah, I didn't know if like we could, I mean, like I remember the old Rent-A-Kid program, that used to exist. The notion of kind of tying community service to, offering rides to your fellow high school students. I mean, if they're there, right? Like if I've got a car and I'm in Model UN and you're carless and you're in drama club or whatever, and your thing gets out a half hour later than me, then I can hang out, or like I have a list of a couple kids that I can take, and we can get them to kind of carpool themselves. And then those kids can submit for community service. I don't know, just as an incentive.
I
See-
think it's a good idea, but it goes back to, how do you connect those kids? Is there some sort of a board? And then again, what's the liability for the town? When you have teenagers driving teenagers.
Yeah, we've got John Strauss has got a question.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, John.
I just want to say very quickly, as we found with the Lyft program, because when we were at the Transportation Committee, the Town Meeting Transportation Committee, we were thinking about using the Lyft program to take the kids around to school, but we found that a person under 18 couldn't use the Lyft service. So I'm not sure if it's still the rule in Massachusetts that a teenager can't drive another teenager in their car. So that's something that, you just want to just go, just to go check and be sure.
Yeah, they have to be a certain age
Yeah.
in order to give a ride to someone other than a family member. That's correct.
So when we're talking about the kids, we always just have to bear in mind a little bit is because they're all good ideas. And then we just have to be sure that, like you say, the liability and so forth, and it's legally okay.
No,
I think that's what
absolutely
people
agree,
always with
John.
the school buses. Yeah.
But I do think it's it's something worth talking about at the school level.
Mhm.
Some of the best solutions can come from other people's suggestions and ability to get involved that might not fall into the purview of this committee that will help alleviate some of the challenges that we have. Let's just go around and see, Jeremy, you have any thoughts that you'd like to add?
Yeah, and just hearing about, the assets and the needs. I did Google while we were just talking. There are apps out there for kind of closed community for parents to join to help shuttle kids around. And the 2 or 3 I clicked on didn't really have background checks, but there might be an opportunity to reach out to one of these startups and talk to them about pairing with them and partnering with them to create this kind of closed community where parents get invited by like the the team or the club that their kids are participating in, and pair it with a background check and work with the startup to do that. And therefore, I mean, almost all these kids have a phone that's sort of their parents, and it's a common platform.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. Can we get a volunteer to take a quick poke at a couple of those and look at the ones that are maybe more most used and easily adoptable?
Yeah. I can take a swing at it and
That'd be great,
bring some
Jeffrey.
information.
I'd hate to have to go to a vote because I know how those things work out. Well, thanks. That's a great suggestion.
Jeremy, if you, you want to throw some, some my way or ask me, I'll see if I can help you out a little bit too.
Okay, thank you.
Catherine. Ernie, you've been quiet ever since nominating me.
Sorry about that, Rick. I'll actually talk to you about that later offline. But just sitting here, it appears that I'm going to take your advice to heart about just coming up with the ideas, and irregardless of the dollar value at the moment, at least. And it looks like what we could use is some kind of a multi-passenger on-demand ride system for at least inside the town. And I'm not talking dollars at the moment. In that, my gut feeling is that that should be a cost that is actually borne by the town, because we're trying to eliminate as much traffic as we can. And by just using Lyft systems or Uber or something like that, we're still on the one person, one vehicle most of the time. So I thought that if the town was actually in a position or got to the position to actually hire that kind of a coordinator who, and it sounds like a software package with some sort of administration, I would imagine. That person could also be the contact person for, as Catherine was talking about, for the where parents go to register. I'm available. My kid goes to both soccer and basketball, and sometimes I can't drive, but most of the time I can, and I'd like to stick my name in there. So when I can't drive, maybe somebody else will take my child, and that kind of thing. Just sitting here listening. I'm a big proponent of this system, whatever it is definitely not going to have to. It's going to have to exist with definite subsidies from the town. It's not going to be a profit maker. Public transportation shouldn't be, in my opinion, a profit maker, because it's a service like snow plowing and the rest of it. So putting the cost aside for a second, and now just jumping to the other side, the out of town communications or transportation type things. When we at the planning board were speaking with them all, we asked them to consider putting all the services that run through the mall, like the Beeline at the time, and Lex Express, and what's the other one? The other services, so that people could actually interconnect at one point rather than running from one side of the mall to the other. Well, it's my understanding that they've done part of that already. They've put at least 2 or 3 of the smaller type vehicles over by the food court entrance. But and I wasn't aware that, or maybe I was and just didn't think about it too much, that the Mbta bus doesn't actually come into the mall. It stops on the mall road at the bus shelter there. And from the food court to the bus shelter on the mall road isn't that great a distance, but it is if you're disabled or you have some other reason that you can't move that fast. So I don't know if the town could ask with the approval of Simon, the mall owner, ask the town if the Mbta bus could actually go into the mall and stop at the same place the other buses do, or it's like having we need a little transportation hub in there. But that's what I'm picking up from this conversation. Anyways, everything I said too much of. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Ernie. Getting the MBTA to change any of their routes really takes a major act. And I will tell you that with any transportation solution, the toughest one is the last mile. You know, in that case, you're talking the last 100 yards, but the last mile, that's what
Yeah,
we are.
yep.
We're, you know, everything that we're talking about here is the
Right.
last mile, getting kids home to school, getting, you know, seniors back home after a Leahy appointment, getting employees back to their office after going to lunch. It's,
Yep.
it's a challenge that it's a very difficult one to solve, but if we can take a little bite here and there and maybe nibble away at it, the ultimate solution is, if money was no object, is you have a series of shuttles that are running continuously on loops that intersect with each other and allow people to jump off and get onto the other one. And then you define the priorities of those loops and how many of them you run. I mean, that's how transportation systems work. It's the expense and the ridership. And I think one of the things that we've got going against us is the B line, through no one's fault, suffered low ridership. I mean, I think there was certainly a marketing issue. People would ask me, where does it go? And I would, you know, I've lived here all my life. I couldn't tell you. But the truth of the matter is, we've got all these people coming from single family residences looking to go to different places. And that's you know, until they get the Star Trek transporter thing going, it's going to be a tough thing for us to solve. Who else is on the committee that we haven't heard from?
Me, I'll go. So I was taking a look through the report that came out of the town meeting subcommittee, and I think that there's a lot of infrastructure wants and needs that would be helpful in terms of sidewalks, more biking infrastructure, a lot of things related to active transportation that doesn't involve vehicles. And it seemed like that was a lot of that was the focus, in addition to having an actual dedicated staff person who would really coordinate all of these activities. But those are some of the things that I picked up on out of that report. What the other thing that I noticed around the data gathering from that report was just the survey that was done. While the responses were good, over 300 responses, I think it was only like 0.01% of the total population. So if there's any way to get more data on those under responding populations like youth and senior, because that seemed to be the lowest percentage, that would probably help drive a little bit more of the direction of recommendations as well. And just, I guess, to get back to sort of the after school activities stuff and sports stuff, I think a lot of parents are already doing this a lot with each other if they have contact information for each other. So sometimes I wonder if maybe like the coordinators of those sports or clubs or activities can request parent contact information to be shared with the entire group, such that they could actually reach out to friends, neighbors, other parents to help out with transportation, because I know we do it a lot with our kids' activities to just coordinate, oh, can you pick up today? I can't get there, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's already happening a lot. It's just those who can't access contact information for other parents are probably the ones who are struggling the most, or feel like they can't participate because they don't know if they will have that option. So
But I was gonna say, even with the students trying to stay the first time, you know, you
yeah,
have to join the club the first time and have a ride home the first time in order to
right,
be a part of it, and then be able to exchange those numbers. And some of them just won't do it because they know they can't get a ride. And
yep.
then you know what I'm saying? So I don't know what the answer is to that either. I mean, I think that's a great idea, by the way, to, you know, to double check and see if you know, the people who are running the club out, you know, if they're exchanging that information, or if they can. That's a great idea, but I still think that the students might be reluctant to even go the first time because they don't have that ride home.
Yeah, that's a common theme with any transportation, you know, the chicken and egg. When we were trying to get the shuttle up running for late night services to attract additional workers, We first looked to see where the workers were, but the truth of the matter is they're not going to apply for a job that they don't have a transportation solution. So you really have to put something on the road in order to get people to then say, okay, I can join that club because I know I have a ride home. Maybe something that will come out of, Jeremy taking a look at maybe some apps. If we can put a solution out there to get people to try to start utilizing that, maybe we can get a little bit of momentum going and see what's working. But communication is the first thing. And to your point, when you're new, you don't know anyone, and parents are going to be reluctant to say, I don't know that person. In some cases, hey, you got a license, take my kid, you're fine. Other people, aren't going to be quite as open. But we certainly want to make sure that kids have the opportunity to join in some after school activity. It's going to help them socially, physically, and have that connection to community that most of us grew up with, living in a community like this. It was just part of what you did. Okay, is there anyone else we haven't heard from that would love to weigh in here? Because I think sharing information is going to be key to any of this.
I'd actually like to bring up one other thing. I've been doing some reading, and I attended a larger meeting for the cities of Boston and Cambridge just to listen. And one of the interesting things that came out was some of the inherent inequities in transportation in large metropolitan areas where they were driving to the metric of ridership and were therefore trying to connect the points with the biggest amounts of people and skipping over other important stops in between to try and drive those ridership numbers up. And while we don't have the same inequities lying behind that here in Burlington, I feel some of the same pattern is there, where you can see with the drive for a lot of the stops is Chestnut Street, where they can turn around, or the mall, or Leahy. And to your point, they're not stopping where the community is using them, at the schools and the parks. And I think thinking through, how do we value and create metrics to it so we can show that this is working? Because to your point, it's a chicken and egg. And then how do you measure it as well to prove that it's working once you get it going? So I think we also have to think through those definitions about measurements.
Great. Anyone else that would like to weigh in? Millie, you've got your hand raised.
Right. I don't know if you can hear me, though. I don't think I'm
Yes.
connected by phone, or am I?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, beautiful. I have to say I have been very impressed this evening, not only with your patience in getting me connected, because I'm a Neanderthal from the 20th century, never mind the 21st or 2nd, but I have really appreciated what Catherine has said, what Rick has said, what Jeremy has said, and particularly on the whole idea of communication, because the Transportation Study Committee found that everybody had a lot of good ideas and a lot of needs and information, but nobody talked with anybody else, and the cross communication between the various segments of town, I think, has a possibility of working because of this subcommittee, which includes a broader spectrum that is usually the case. A couple of comments I have to make, because I have gotten complaints from my constituents who used to pick up the Mbta bus at Macy's because the 350 bus would come in there, and a lot of the people that work at the mall could wait in either the building or under shelter, not having to walk through a bunch of parking lots in order to get to where the bus stop was moved. And she was really upset because she said, for people that have a lot of things to carry, that's a big schlep from the one end of the mall to the other. And it was done so that they could be at 3rd Avenue as well. So the MBTA does make changes, but those changes need sometimes, I think, to be better thought out. The second thing I was thinking about was that when I see the congestion in town, which for the most part I'd rather see on my bicycle or on the sidewalk than in a car, because I often get to pass my friends several times while they're sitting in traffic. But I've noticed that at the end of school in particular, and the high school in general, because I live right next to it, there have been times when 15 minutes before school lets out, the traffic is backed up almost to the light at Simons Park into the school of people waiting to pick up the children at the school, and the school buses appear to be largely empty. Now, we had a school bus contract that cost $5 million till it was reconfigured a bit. But the high school students last year who did the survey found that the middle and the high school, 50% of the students, and I think this may be more than just the upper education levels, are driven to school. And yet we provide, which seems like a great idea, a potential seat for everyone. But when you have 50% not taking it, it seems we need, as Ernie said, some kind of coordination to see if we can't make better use of the school buses. And if we have way more buses than are having any kids in them, perhaps some of that money could be going to having buses that are going places that people need to go or that students need to go at times other than when the buses come. So I think that there, particularly, I'm hoping, I haven't heard anything lately about safe routes to school, but that may be one of the ways, that's for the younger grades, but that might be a start in the right direction of getting the kind of federally funded support to make a better use of the schools and how to get there with the transportation. So I'm hoping that this committee, which I love the presentation. Rick, the thing that amazes me is how you managed to do that when you just got elected and suddenly you were Johnny on the spot. You perhaps should run for national office, but not till Burlington solves its problems. But keep up the good work, and I think you're beginning to ask the right questions, and I thank you. And I think Eileen had her hand up too, but I didn't know
Yes.
if anybody saw that. Thank you
Thank-
for listening.
Thank you for your comments, Millie. And thank you for the compliment about running the meeting. Wait until my wife finds out. I think that'll
You're
change
dead.
pretty quickly. Eileen, you've got your hand up. Eileen Sickler, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, yes. Hi, all. First of all, I just want to say it's nice to hear everyone talking and exchanging ideas and just communicating. And to Millie's point, and this is what I was going to mention, again, over 50% of at least high schoolers are not taking buses. So I didn't know if there was any analysis that's been done at the schools to sort of show, as a result of that, these are the excess buses. So I guess in my accounting brain, it would seem like if there's that many kids not taking a bus, and also, you can see that from the traffic lined up, as Melly said, it would seem like there would be extra buses and maybe they could be put to another purpose, like a couple more after school buses. The other thing, and again, I was on the transportation committee with Millie. I wonder if there could be any synergy with the Lexington coordinator, transportation coordinator. It used to be half-time for that person, and I don't know if it's full-time or now or what have you, but I think that might be worth checking into. And maybe she takes on Burlington as well, and we pay her or them, whoever it is, a stipend or some sort of an allowance, for overseeing our transportation needs. But in any event, I'm glad to see you guys are working. And lastly, so I'm a big one for communication and transparency, and it would be, I think, worthwhile to have a little 60-second spot at town meeting in January to let the group know what you guys are up to and what your objectives are and that sort of thing. Again, just communication. Thanks all.
Thank you, Eileen. That's a great point. I just want to touch on the point because it's been mentioned twice now about the buses and people not taking the buses. This came up in the master plan steering committee. We talked a little bit about it because we were talking about complete streets and safe routes to school. It's a complicated issue. Normally, the person, I say, hey, my kids took the bus. Why can't other people take the bus? The pressure on kids in our school system right now is really hard. They're spending a lot of time doing homework, and a lot of parents look and say, hey, they've got to get on the bus at 7:30, but they don't have to be to school, until 8:15. If I can give them that extra half an hour of sleep, rather than just, it's not just a matter of kids being coddled. And there were parents that really wanted to have that control and give that extra time. And that was really the only time they may have had with their children. That may be evolving a little bit now that we're seeing a lot of people working from home. Maybe they want to get the kids out of the house a little bit earlier and get some free time. But in the communication, to be able to hear that from parents, the reason that they were driving them wasn't really because they were just spoiling the kids. There was a need that the stresses of school and the ability to be able to sleep was really something they thought was important to their child. Dave Van Camp, I see you've got your hand raised.
Hi, all. Yes, thanks, Rick. I also was on the transportation committee, and I'm going to, bang the communication drum a little bit, but in a slightly different way. Rick, I was really impressed with your inventory of public transit resources coming into Burlington. You laid it out very nicely. Here's the 350, 354, here's Lex Express, routes, times, places. And I know I've tried to look at bus schedules, and it's going through the MBTA site is challenging. What you did is exactly what we need, an easy way to know what's available. And this committee is, rightly concerned about, all the different avenues that you have available. Try to make sense of it. It's a low-cost solution, but maybe something on the town website or a Facebook page saying, here are the resources available to you. I know we have some of that on the website now, but it's buried about 3 layers deep. So one thing this committee could do is put your collective heads together and say, what is the inventory of transportation resources that is available to residents of Burlington? And just lay it out there and say, here's the 350 schedule. Here's when it stops at various places. Oh, great. I can have my kid walk down to the bottom of the street and get to his after-school job or whatever. That's a service that this committee can provide pretty quickly and pretty cheaply, probably in time for the next town meeting, and say, hey, look what we're doing. We can do more. And in terms of momentum, I think that would be a good game starter. So I just wanted to put that out, put it in on the table and between your ears and see if we can go further.
Thank you, Dave. Actually, Jennifer just put into the chat that if I can give her that map, she can put it up on the website. I think we'll also talk with Melissa Tentakoulis, because this is something that she's working on as well. It's all about communication. I think as you've seen, the town's website is evolving. It's changing. It's getting much better. Information, people look for it on the web, and to be able to go to the town's website and get this type of information, I think it is critical. And it's a great idea, Dave. I think for short work, we can probably get something up there pretty quickly. Ernie, you had a question.
Yeah, actually a comment. Sitting here listening and hopefully listening more than talking anyways, I was thinking that we've almost been talking about transportation for students, transportation for seniors, transportation for workers. I think it's possible. Or we shouldn't preclude the solution that would be transportation for all, maybe even on the same vehicles, if they were multi-vehicles. If we could do an on-demand system that on-demand seems to be running around my brain right now, but if you could actually do an on-demand system that included everybody. So I don't care if you're 80 or 13. Jump on the same bus. If you're going in the same direction, you get off now, you get off later, type thing. And maybe I'm missing something. Marge, am I missing something?
You're not. The only concern I have is that some of the seniors take a little more care. And we use it, some of our outreach is through the van. But a lot of those seniors are also pretty able-bodied. They just don't drive, and they could use the same transportation as anybody else.
John, I see you had your hand up. You're on mute, John.
There we go. Sorry. It
No
takes me a
problem.
moment to find the button. Thanks. I just want to say that in reference to what Ernie said, I've been to some RTAC meetings, and the town of Salem has one of those on-demand services, so we can always go back and look and see how that's working for them. And then just recently at the RTAC meeting, the town of Wellesley has their own little mini bus line, like we talk about from time to time. And they run it with their MBTA money, and that works fine. However, they have limited hours and different things that are not exactly a good match for us. But again, something to look at in the future. And just, I was riding on the Lex Express the other day, and the driver was talking. When you get a load of this, there were some very enterprising gentlemen that came into their yard over the weekend and cleaned out all the catalytic converters on the Lex Express, and also took care of the ones, I guess, for Joseph's Transportation too, on the yards in Woburn.
It's
So
happening
just
across the state.
Yeah,
It
32.
happens across the country. I deal with last mile in over 300 locations for deliveries to businesses in this country, and it happens all the time, all over the country for years now. Last couple of years, it's picked up too.
Yeah, I was told that by the LRTA that the catalytic converters are worth like $2,500, $2,800 on the open
These-
markets. And
these
those bands are high enough, you can get under them very easily.
These ones were, the ones the fellow was talking about were 3,300, and it takes 40 seconds to get it off. So it's just something else to think about.
Well, if they could use their energy for good, we could certainly use a few more people like that. Mr. Selectman, I see you have your hand up. Nick,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to be as polite as humanly possible. So I have a bunch of baloney I want to sputter on about for a minute, so just bear with me. I'm glad that I let everyone else talk first because it raised some other things I wanted to mention. In terms of communication, at our next selectmen's meeting, I'll be presenting some conversations and a proposal that I've been having with the Collins Center around just residential communication, how the town communicates to residents, how residents can, be a part of, that conversation, how we can opt in, and curate, the town as a piece of our feeds. And I think that, like, as we begin as a committee to kind of like, find ways to kind of group people together, maybe there's a way where we can just ladder everyone into one, maybe it's all feeding back into one kind of thing where you can say, my interests are, parks in town, the rec department, and transportation. Give me that stuff. So there may be some bigger picture things that we can tackle from that perspective. In between last meeting and this meeting, I was trying to take some notes to myself as I was looking around at things, and I definitely think that one thing that we were talking about tonight, and something that could be very beneficial for us, is this idea of regional efforts. I plan on, and I'll try to forward it to this committee as well. Susan Barrett, who is the transportation coordinator in Lexington, is hosting an event tomorrow. Just a conversation. I believe it's at 1:30 in the afternoon. I think that she'll be a great, person for us to kind of lean on, talk to, and if we, want to move in that direction of, skipping to another item, the notion of a transportation coordinator. Um, you know, my brain tries to solve it in stages. So, what could stage one be? It could be this committee, and maybe Paul Sagarino or Melissa, Tatopoulos, or somebody in the administration office that can bear the burden of dealing with this committee and being our eyes and ears when we're not together. But then another piece of it could be is it the town funding part of Susan Barrett's salary in conjunction with Lexington? And can we steal her services? Much like we use Joanne Faust to cover HR for both the town and the schools. Is there a way for us to kind of support that, and then leading to a full-on hire of a transportation coordinator. But I mean, I think that if we were to propose intermediary options to town meeting, they may be more willing to, kind of move in that direction as opposed to just us dropping a whole other FTE kind of onto the plate. Um, and then, like Rick, I thought it was great. You were breaking it down in terms of, needs by demographic. And I would love for this committee at some point to put that against, like tactics and, funding mechanisms. And because, I started writing down things like, okay, we want to focus on NPO funding and planning. We want to focus on public transportation, infrastructure, sidewalks, the transportation corridor. These were all kind of like buckets that I started to create. And I was like, okay, how do I fill these? So if we can create a matrix of that against, demographical needs, maybe we can to Ernie's point about having like almost like a singular on-demand service, like we can kind of figure out like where the biggest groups kind of are, and then we can, go from there. Because I mean, Ernie, I'm with you. I think that the notion of, you know, one, two kind of on-demand type service things that can help, really circulate the town and keep people moving would be really, really interesting. Um, and then super microscopic, because I think that, as we look at, um, you know, tactics small to large and short term to long term, um, when Rick, you were talking about kind of getting people to lunch, getting people moving, I think about all of what's happening on the other side of Middlesex Turnpike that isn't the mall, right? I think about the stretch from, beyond Best Buy all the way down to, what's happening down by Lifetime. And I say to myself, no one in their right mind would try and cross Middlesex Turnpike on foot, right? It's like playing Frogger and you're gonna lose. Um, but something that's been in the back of my mind, and I've talked to other folks about it, is the notion of just footbridges over Middlesex Turnpike. And I mean, yeah, we're talking money, but let's, I mean, like we've been saying, right? Like, let's just put that, aside for a moment. The notion of being able to get people across Middlesex Turnpike on foot, when we talk about a complete streets, viewing, I think would be huge. And that's not just for people who are, here doing business, right? You think about, anyone who's at the mall who wants to catch a movie or vice versa, anyone who, is going to be working out at Lifetime later, but needs to run and grab some, yoga pants at wherever the mall. I mean, like I'm just, if we can create those connection points for folks, and have them say, yeah, I can park at the mall and I can do a bunch and then go back to the car and I'm good to go. I think those are the kind of, almost chunked mentalities that we can be thinking in. So I'm gonna stop prattling. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that, Nick. I think piggybacking off a couple of things you said there, Melissa was working on that, Middlesex Turnpike, Mall Road, Blanchard Road area. And interconnectivity is the key to activating all of these areas. And it doesn't happen overnight. But if you start connecting some of these through walkable paths, people start getting around more, seeing things they didn't see before. And yeah, I mean, we all know you're going to take your hands to your life in your own hands, trying to cross Middlesex Turnpike on foot. I mean, I've seen people do it. I don't know how many of those spots I see in the road were people that attempted it at late at night. But that's the key here is to activate these areas, get them together. And I think having the communication start, we realize not only what we know, but what we don't know. So you mentioned something about a meeting tomorrow with transportation coordinator in Lexington. Is that open to the public?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Mhm.
If we could get that information, I would love to see if I'm available for that as well because the things that we're talking about, these are common challenges in all communities. And if we find out not only things that have worked, but things that haven't worked, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel if there's a wheel out there and maybe it needs a little rounding off for us. But I'd love to sit in on that. And anyone, if we can get that information to the group, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, totally forward along, because I mean, I know Rick, you and I have had these conversations around, the a spill from Burlington into other communities, right? Bedford is taking a stab at, I mean, we jokingly say they're stealing, the businesses that were going to come to Burlington anyways, but I think that it's the natural progression of the free market and what's been happening in Burlington, and a lot that we've done is creating that spill. But if we were all in it together, if we were all trying to create those connection points, the hope is that the ease of use, the convenience for the end user increases, while the cost hopefully decreases, because now we're all shouldering that burden. And especially when we go for larger state or federal funding, there might be an opportunity there to say, look, this is a tri-town thing, this is a four-town thing, we're in this together. You definitely want to fund a big thing, that's because it's going to work, because we're all committed to it.
Thank you for sharing that, Melissa, in the chat.
Sure. Rick, can I comment just quickly to
Sure.
clarify a little bit on some discussions around Susan Barrett? She's full-time in Lexington, so there isn't really a share, so to speak, possibility at the moment, but she's working hard on a regionalization action plan with 128 Business Council. So I think 128 will be part of that meeting tomorrow night. I think she's also trying to find some intermediate steps around maybe some shared services with neighboring towns. So I anticipate, I think she actually is meeting with Marge in January, and maybe another provider in January, as well as some other local folks, to see about utilization of some of sort of underutilized resources that each individual town has. Belmont, Bedford, Burlington are all ones she's mentioned. And so I think, a big piece and possible opportunity will be to really start paying attention to what that regionalization action plan looks like, and how Burlington may be able to benefit by joining in some way. It will cost, there will be a cost for sure, but there may be some resource pooling that can happen that would help subsidize, that it wouldn't be as much of a burden to bear as if, Burlington went on it alone. So just some clarity around some of that work that's happening in Lexington.
I appreciate that. I think one of the things that we're seeing here in Burlington, we've got the amenities that have attracted some of these larger companies to be here. And those amenities relied on that daytime population, which is no longer here. By collaborating with some communities, Bedford, Lexington come to mind, they need the amenities. And maybe now is when we get that transportation, spoken hub program going, to be able to get some of those people over here to utilize these amenities until, so we can keep these amenities here without that daytime population. And I know, as much as we as residents have tried to do our part, it's not the same as, having 20,000 people with corporate cards. That's really what, fuels the daytime businesses. So maybe this would be a great opportunity, because these other companies, especially in the life sciences and medical device manufacturing, they have people at work. And these people at work, don't necessarily want to be eating bagged lunches every day. So I think a collaborative effort would certainly help us to bring some people in during the day and using these amenities. Jeremy, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just wanted to, I really like a lot of these ideas, first of all. It's very exciting. But I also wanted to throw out another idea, which is, what if we turn some of this question on its head, where we're looking to bring people to places? The question is, can we bring places to people? So the thinking in the back of my head that's rattling around is, when we look at the elderly population, we're saying they need to get to all these places. Is there a way that we can, much like a new store I've seen in town made in Burlington, bring a lot of local shops to some central points for elderly people, where they can, display some goods, make a sale, and then drop them off later? That may take down some of the need to get out, and then we might be able to use those assets, across other populations, be they school-age children, people who are working. Not sure the viability of it, just, an early thought on another way to approach it.
No, it's a great point. I thought Nick was gonna wrinkle his eyes there because when we talk about bringing the businesses to the residents, keep in mind, a lot of our tax revenue comes from commercial real estate. We need to make sure that there's a demand for that real estate. Everyone loves food trucks. Everyone loves oil changes on demand. If we become, everything's being done in our driveway, we've got a lot of the economy that drives this town that will be empty buildings. So there's a downside to each of it, but I agree, we've got to turn this thing on its head and think of things outside of the box. But relying on experts that have been there and done that is going to be critical as well. Point of order here. How long is this meeting going tonight?
So I didn't necessarily set an end time to it. I believe this WebEx is good for 2 hours, which means we have a half an hour left before I think
Okay.
this thing will automatically shut down. And I know we've got a couple of actual agenda items to tackle. So up to you, Mr. Chair, if you want to table conversation, finish agenda, double back discussion, however you
No,
want.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Before I was chair, I didn't have to pay attention. Someone else would. I usually just sign on and go as long as people want to go, but I do want to be courteous of people's time as well. Are there other agenda items that we have not discussed that were on last meeting's notes?
So there were, let's pull it up real quick. The only other two actual agenda items were I was emailed by John Denizio around our input on the rideshare funding, and then the minutes from our last meeting, which I had forwarded out earlier today. So if you'd like to take the rideshare item, I can give everyone a quick download on that.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So very quickly, we receive from the the cents per mile within town that comes from the rideshare program. This year we received $12,001 from the rides that have kind of circulated. And so Mr. Denizio, our town accountant, had just emailed me and said, at your next transportation subcommittee, if there's discussion around other uses for this funding that this committee would like to recommend, other than just putting the money back into the rideshare program, he'd like to get our thoughts on that. So I wanted to put it to this committee. If we think that there's a better way to spend the $12,000 on transportation-based needs, do we want to do that at this time? My personal recommendation is that I think that we're too fresh at the moment, so that we don't know what we're trying to do quite yet, and that we should probably let this 12,000 stick with the rideshare and see what we come up with in terms of recommendations. But I wanted to bring it to this committee and see if anyone had any thoughts.
Now, when you're saying the rideshare program, thank you for that information. You're saying the rideshare program, you're talking about the senior Lyft program. Okay.
Yeah.
Before that, this money was earmarked for Beeline previous to that, correct? Is that,
This is the money that the program itself is generating.
yes, but I think
So
the money
it's
that we
actually
had
called
before.
Uber. It's Uber, Lyft. It's all the vendors that are providing service in Burlington.
Yeah,
That
but the money that came out of that, we spent previously, we directed it to the Beeline, and now it's being to the rideshare for seniors.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I'm open up for discussion, and if we want to weigh in on that, I agree with Nick that I think we've got enough on our plate now to be working on, and leave that alone, or Marge is going to be coming after us all. I mean, they need a solution during this period of time, and I would say that that's something we table and just leave that alone at this point. But I'm opening it up for discussion if anyone has any opposing thoughts.
I have an opinion. It would be nice if that was money that was accessible to other groups on transportation initiatives, if it could be put in an account that's set aside. Because let's say something like an app that might be a lower cost option that we want to move forward with or recommend we move forward with, that might be a funding source for something like that. So some of the lower hanging fruit might actually fit well. We may not know yet, but I wonder if they could just set it aside in an account right now, and you know, that would roll over in the next fiscal year and see where we go.
I can certainly ask. I know that that money's a little finicky when it comes to how it sits in accounts, where it's allowed to go, and what it can be used for. But I mean, I'm happy to ask John that question.
Okay. John Strauss, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to make a little bit of an ask that while we're, before we start siphoning off some of this rideshare money and other ideas, that we take into account the fact that the surcharging or the surge pricing has not been fully settled, and that we make sure that we direct that money to help out our fixed income folks who depend on the Lyft program, that they're not suddenly, that somehow they can get some of that money back so that they're not stranded. For example, in my particular case, I was going to take a ride, and the surcharge at that time, in addition to what the town paid for that ride, the $10, there's going to be an additional $20 to me surcharge to take that ride on a Friday afternoon. So not a particular crazy time of the day. So unless we're gonna be prepared to have seniors stranded someplace because they may say, well, I just don't have that money. I think what we have in our little pot, we should first look and say, okay, we'll cover the town folk and make sure that they can get and about and they're not gonna be stranded in Burlington.
I appreciate the opinion. I mean, I'm inclined to leave it as it is right now until we figure out a better solution. I certainly don't think we need to be taking that on right now. We've got enough things on our plate. I have a history of being able to whack the bee's nest as much as anyone else, but I try to make those few and far between and very well directed. Ernie, did you have your hand up? Okay, so the other issue, Nick, that you mentioned was,
The only other thing on the agenda was just review and approval of our last meeting's minutes.
okay, do I have a motion to approve minutes from 10/27/2021 as printed? Marge, you have a motion, you have a second?
Make a motion.
Second.
Did I hear a second?
Yep, second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? How many is that? How many have we got in this committee?
There should be 6 on board tonight, but your seventh is not with you right now.
Okay, 6 approved, 600. Any other items we want to discuss before adjourning? Next meeting. Did we have it on the schedule? Previous unnamed chair?
We did not have anything on the books yet.
So we decided we're gonna go monthly on Wednesdays. Let me just pull up a schedule.
Are
And
we
I
looking
know-
at January 12th? That's a month.
January 12th sounds correct. January 12th at 6 PM. Will that work? 6:30. We did 6:30? I see all the heads
Yes.
nodding. All right, so next meeting will be January, did you say 16th?
12.
12th. I know. January 12th at 6:30. And Melissa, you're taking care of the minutes?
Yes, I got them.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second. Do I have a second, please?
second,
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
6-0. Thanks, folks. We'll see you in a month. Enjoy your holidays.
You.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
Happy
you too.
holidays.